This is the full package. It's easily one of the most powerful and good looking and lightweight 13-inch Windows laptop that you can get for yourself. Obviously, if you just go through the specs, you're getting the best high-performance 8-core CPU from AMD, along with a fast 16 gigs DDR5 RAM, and it's loaded with 1 TB of NVMe SSD. This is an all-powerful machine. But then what makes this a powerful beast is its ability to connect with an external GPU. And then with this, you can actually get desktop-level graphics from this slim piece of laptop. But we'll talk more about the ROG XT Mobile a little later. First, let's talk about the design. I mean, right from the aluminum lid to the Magalloy keyboard deck to the rubber padded back, the X13, it looks and feels absolutely premium. Now the whole chassis has this wave pattern to which, if you did this, kind of makes this sound. So there's some texture and reality to that wave pattern. Plus, you're going to absolutely love this compact size. You almost find it very hard to believe that something so small can pack so much performance and still give you so much portability and mobility. Carrying it around is going to be a breeze, and you kind of really feel proud that you're carrying such a high-performing machine which looks so goddamn sleek and lightweight. Moreover, it flips all around to become a tablet with a touchscreen, so you can really just use it in whatever way you prefer. The keyboard feels good, types really well, decent key travel, and it's backlit with white LEDs. I mean, sure, it's not RGB, but as long as it's backlit, it does the job for me. You've also got these macro keys that are programmable shortcuts to any commonly used function that you may want to program them into. The trackpad, it has a nice feel and usability as well. It's glass coated and it's 56% larger than last year. I mean, nothing extraordinary, but for a 13-inch laptop, I think it's quite good. Also, underneath you've got these rubber pads, so you've got a full line and you've got two more over here, and it kind of keeps it stable on smooth surfaces. So when you open it and close it, you see it's not going to slide. So that's pretty good and stable. The other thing is they've got downward speakers over here and here. Now, they're not too loud, but I think for a small chassis like this, which is actually geared for performance, they've actually optimized it for, better performance than for loudspeakers. So they're decent at best. Now, while we're on the subject of design, I do want to mention the ROG Z13. So it's another laptop in the Flow lineup, and it's very similarly spec'd out as the X13 over here, except it's got the Intel Core i9 13900H, which is again top of the line Intel CPU for laptops. And the beauty of this is twofold. First, it's got a detachable keyboard giving you more flexibility, so you use it as a laptop or as a tablet. Second, if you look at the lid design, it's super unique. It's got a window here that gives you a peek into the insides. It looks super techy, cool, and definitely has more of a gaming vibe than the X13. Of course, given its form factor, the Z13 does give you a bit more flexibility in the way you want to use it. Attach a keyboard and mouse to game as you would normally, or just make it stand and connect using controllers for a more traditional console type gaming. The Z13 has a flap here which can be used to make it stand this way or in this way, giving you more flexibility and display angles. And since this is a tablet by itself, it does have volume rockers right here. And by the way, the Z13 can connect itself to the external GPU and provide you desktop level graphics as with the Flow X13. So while both of them, belong to the ROG Flow family, they're actually quite different in their form factors, and so the flexibility and possibilities that they offer are quite different. So as a consumer, you're pretty spoiled for choices, and you can go with whichever one that fits your usage pattern and lifestyle better. Let's talk about ports now. And again, for a 13-inch laptop, this has almost all ports that you will need on a general day-to-day basis. So on the right, you've got one USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A USB port and a super fast USB 4 Gen 2 Type C port, which can also be used for charging the laptop. On the left, you've got a proprietary XG connector to connect to the ROG Mobile XG unit, a microSD card reader, an HDMI 2.1 port, and a 3.5mm headphone jack to connect your gaming headsets. Now, obviously, the Z13 does not give you as many ports owing to its, unique design, but you can get yourself the external GPU, which does expand the port situation quite significantly. Now, before we talk about performance, let's also touch upon the display. So the ROG X13 features what ROG calls their Nebula display. So it's a 13.4-inch IPS touch-sensitive panel with a very crisp resolution of 2560 by 1600 pixels and a super high 165Hz smooth refresh rate. It's got that 16:10 aspect ratio, which is now, the more widely adopted normal. Also, the overall view seems quite good because of thin bezels. And so it looks very minimal and classy that way. There's also an IR camera here which supports Windows facial login, and it works perfectly well. The display also supports Nvidia G-Sync. It's also a Pantone validated color accurate display with 100% DCI-P3 color gamut. So if you're trying to do something that requires you to be on color accurate displays, sure, this can help you with that, and it offers you color calibration as well. There are also multiple display profiles that you can cycle through in the ROG Armory Crate software and set to a preset that you find the best for yourself. It's also decently bright at about 500 nits. Like, if I'm sitting outdoors, I don't really need to squint my eyes to understand what I'm looking at. But sure, if you're sitting under extremely bright sun on a typical summer day in India, that might be a bit too much for this. Now, the Z13, it's pretty much the same display as the X13, except it's got more of a, like a glossy finish as you would expect from a tablet kind of form factor. And by the way, pretty strong magnets. Anyway, so both of these displays also support stylus touch inputs. If you're in the mood to take notes or illustrate or draw, you'll be able to do that on both of them. Now, let's talk about the performance, and for some context, let's look at the specs first. So, the Flow X13 has an AMD Ryzen 9 7940HS, while the Z13 has the Intel Core i9 13900H. And except for the main chip, the other specs are quite similar. Both have non-expandable 16 gigs of DDR5 RAM, with the X13 having a faster clock. Both have 1TB NVMe super-fast SSDs and have integrated Nvidia RTX 4060 laptop GPUs with 8 gigs of video RAM. Now, these are one of the most high-end configurations that you can get for yourself in a 13-inch compact chassis. It probably can't get any more compact and yet stay as powerful as these do. But the thing with performance is that merely the label of the processor does not determine how much power you can actually expect out of the machine. It actually depends on how much power you can supply to the chip or how much power the chip can draw without getting too hot, and of course, how the laptop is henceforth cooled. First of all, it's crazy that both of these laptops come with powerful GPUs in such a form factor. And to be honest, they're good enough to play casual games like Valorant or even the most demanding games like Call of Duty and Forza. Now, since the ROG X13 has a RTX 4060 integrated, you can pretty much play these games on the go and still expect very respectable performance and frame rates. So first I got onto gaming on the X13 with the integrated RTX 4060 GPU. So sitting in a room with an ambient air cool temperature of about 24 degrees, firstly, it's absolutely not a problem playing even the toughest of games without connecting an external GPU. I played Valorant at first, which obviously isn't as demanding, and I was getting more than 160 to 170 FPS. Call of Duty was giving a good 100 FPS, but then Forza 5, which actually didn't give a very high FPS at about average of 50 FPS. But guys, this is really not bad for a 2K display rendering frames at that rate at high graphic quality and in such a small chassis. Sure, the fans started blowing some heat and noise with it, but it wasn't unpleasant at all. My guess is Asus struck balance between power and thermals, so it doesn't heat up to unpleasant levels. Now, the ROG X13 also comes with a mux switch, so if you want, you can drive all the power from the GPU, bypassing the CPU. But more than that, it also comes with Nvidia's advanced Optimus, so you can pretty much go between hybrid mode and discrete GPU mode without restarting the machine at all. And in fact, it can do that automatically depending on what the situation demands. But then, as I said earlier, you can get desktop level graphic performance from this if you get the ROG XG Mobile. So this essentially has an RTX 4090 GPU inside in here, and it has its own power supply, so it can draw a lot of power, along with all the extra ports that you get with this, including the option to put in a LAN cable for lag-free multiplayer gaming. And the performance definitely got a boost, especially in case of Forza 5, which went from 50 FPS earlier to 150 FPS once I connected that external GPU. I think the external GPU is a great flexibility to keep on the side for when you want intense gaming and also drive larger and higher refresh rate displays. Alright, so all that was gaming, but what about video editing? And even for that, it should be perfectly fine. So I tried editing 4K videos shot in 4:2 to 10-bit format, which are generally heavier than, your usual 4K files, and it could work with them. Sure, I had to drop the playback to 1/4, so I could add in graphics and transitions and still be able to edit easily. And that's the thing about this. It's so small. And the fact that you can take it anywhere with you and still be able to edit 4K video files, I think that is just phenomenal. But then it's definitely not meant for very intense workflows in terms of editing. So if you're like layering multiple 4K files and then you're throwing in plugins and then more effects and transitions, that will slow it down. Also, let's talk about thermals, right? So see, it's a small chassis. And if you want a portable laptop, that's the one thing you have to compromise on: the thermals. There's just so much that a small machine with a powerful CPU and GPU can vent out in terms of heat, and you can't even complain. I mean, I'm just glad that Asus continues to improve and it tries their best to maintain lower temperatures of their laptops. So, they use liquid metal instead of, traditional thermal paste on their CPU. They also employ 84-blade arc flow fans, which actually increases the air circulation. And then they also use heat sinks and heat pipes with as large a surface area as possible to dissipate as much heat as they can. Now let's move on to other things, and since this is an ROG laptop, you do get the Armory Crate app, which allows you to really customize your experience with the laptop. Like I've already talked about how you can choose a display preset in the Armory Crate app depending on your personal preference. But what's even more important is that you can switch between different operating modes depending on the power you need. So you can keep it on silent for absolutely no fan noise. For example, when you're doing regular office work, you could move to performance if you need it, or to turbo when you're gaming or editing videos. There's also a manual mode that gives you full control over how much you want to push the limits. Now in terms of audio, it's got two smart amp speakers, which are at best just okay. I mean, it is a small chassis, and my belief is that Asus would have prioritized gaming hardware or performance hardware over audio hardware, and so the sound and the volume may not be as loud and as rich as you'd expect it to be. But for gamers, I would anyway hope and expect that you're going to be wearing gaming headsets and not really relying on the speakers on this thing. Now let's talk about battery and charging. And on the battery front, one thing you have to keep in mind is that the AMD chip is going to be more battery efficient than the corresponding Intel chip. So the X13 with the 7940HS AMD chip is going to have significantly more active time on 100% charge than the Z13 with the Intel Core i9-13900H. So much so that I was getting about 7 to 8 hours on a full charge on the X13 as compared to the 4 to 5 hours that I was getting on the Z13. Of course, I wasn't gaming all throughout. This was just considering regular day-to-day use and general office work. Though another important thing to note is that the battery capacity of the Z13 is comparatively smaller than the X13 given the chassis size. Now both the laptops can be charged using the Type-C 130-watt AC adapter, which is quite handy and compact. So overall guys, if you're looking for a 13-inch laptop or a small form factor laptop yet have a lot of performance, your choices are quite limited to begin with. But then with the ROG Flow X13 and the Z13, not only do you get that 13-inch compact form factor, but you also get really high-performing laptop CPUs that are there in the world right now. And then you also get added flexibility and added performance. Flexibility because both of these are touch displays. One actually flips 360 and the other one actually has a detachable keyboard, making it, into a tablet. And then on top of that, you can actually connect an external GPU, one that houses an RTX 4090. So you can also expect desktop level graphic performance from these laptops. There aren't really any laptops in the market that can offer that kind of flexibility if you need it and when you need it. And I think that's fair. If you compare the value proposition given these specs and you compare it to other manufacturers that offer similarly spec'd laptops, you'll find this extremely value for money. Now I'm going to leave the links to buy these in the description below, so if you're interested, you can go through that. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section, and as always, I'll help you out with your decision. I hope you guys really enjoyed watching the video, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification icon, and mark all. I'll see you guys in the next one.